Welcome to Future Ready Live, where we talk about topics that will help CPAs, CGMAs, and their organizations adapt and thrive in an accelerating, exponentially changing world. I'm your host, Tom Hood, the EVP of Business Engagement and Growth at the AICPA and CIMA, the largest global body of certified professional accountants in the world, representing CPAs and CGMAs, students, and engaged professionals. Today, we're going to be talking about the future of finance and accounting from AICPA and CIMA's new CEO, Mark Koziel. Joining me is Mark Koziel, CPA, CGMA, and CEO of the AICPA and CIMA. Mark came back to AICPA and CIMA after leading the Allineal Global Firm Association with 268 firms representing $6 billion in revenue. Prior to that, he spent 14 years at the AICPA and CIMA in the firm's services area. Koziel has been a leader and advocate for finance and accounting throughout his career. He has appeared among the top 10 of Accounting Today's top 100 most influential people in accounting and been named to the International Accounting Bulletin's Global Accounting Power 50 list. And I think you just made an appearance for the CPA Practice Advisor Thought Leader Symposium. So everybody, welcome Mark Koziel here. Mark, it's great to have you back.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me. It's great to be back. And I said, as I was reintroduced to council back in October, I said I was coming home. I missed being at the association, missed being with AICPA and CIMA leadership. So it's great to be back.
And it's good to have you back. So let's start with your last 2 months. I mean, technically, you were started on January 1st. I have a feeling you were working a lot more before that in the prep side, but you've already hit the ground running and listening to members, volunteers, our board of directors, and CIMA council. Talk about some of your highlights and observations so far.
Yeah, so it's 55 days, the 55th day, but who's counting? Officially, anyway, as you said, I might have been working a little bit for the association in October and November and December before I started. And it was really, everything was really starting to heat up then. It's interesting now as we get through it. There's just so many things going on. First of all, the political landscape that we have here in the U.S. currently, and really the political landscape globally as well. I got another kind of inside information today regarding CSRD and where that's going with ESG, but we could table that for a later discussion. But the bigger thing was really about listening, right? And getting back to our members. And we created a email address, askmark@aicpa-cima.com, asking our members to provide feedback to me and asking specifically, what could the association do for you? What could the association do for your career? And what can the association do for the profession? And it's gotten already a lot of great feedback from a variety of areas, globally, U.S. focused, U.K. focused. And so it's good to kind of reset, get that information, and make sure that what it is we're trying to accomplish, we're able to move forward. And some of that, if I were to be specific on the CGMA side and management accounting, it was definitely a request for more community, which you and I have talked a lot about offline, and things that we're kind of focused on doing for our members and really giving our members a sense of belonging in a different way. And I think that's really important, something that I did at Allineal that I was pretty proud of what we were able to create there, but also being able to do that. And from the CIMA side specifically, probably a lot around just internal systems, being able to deal with us a little bit easier than maybe it's been in the last year. And so there are a number of things there. And the CPA community, we've talked a lot about things happening there. But I'll go in whatever direction you want to go from there.
Well, you to speak about the geopolitics and everything else, it's a lot going on, to be sure. So you're coming in at very exciting times, and one where we really do have to listen to our members and start to figure out what we can anticipate about where things are going to help them out, right? That's right. A huge one. And you and I have talked about this a lot, but what's your perspective on the power of both CPA and CGMA? You and I are both some of the early adopters of of getting our recognition as CGMAs also. But what do you think about that? What's all that mean to all of our members?
I was here for the vote back in the day when we had it. And as you know, for years, we as a profession have always been challenged by how do we add value to our members in business and industry, which is now, in just looking at AICPA membership, is more than half of the overall membership of the AICPA. We're CPAs who were sitting in business and industry, and they felt that the CPA was incredibly important to them to continue to maintain as they go throughout their career. As you had mentioned, so, before joining the association, I spent 12 years in public accounting, and then I spent 3 years in political and public affairs media, doing absolutely nothing related to accounting. I ran the time buy division, and also started to do client coordination. So I was the client manager of one of our largest public affairs clients, which was just absolutely crazy work in comparison to other things I had been involved in. And so being on the B&I side, being on the public accounting side, and then joining the association back in 2006 and moving my family from Buffalo to Durham, North Carolina, having the perspective of both PA and MA back then, and then understanding the importance of all of that. And so when the discussion around some semblance of aligning AICPA with CIMA, it did make sense to me then. But it actually hit me even more so leaving the association in 2020 to join Alineo. And then you fast forward to October 15th is when the announcement was made that I was leaving Alineo to come back to AICPA and CIMA as CEO. And so that was on October 15th, was a Wednesday. On Thursday, I was getting on a plane to Singapore for our global conference for Alineo Global. And I expected to go there and have a lot of our global members really not care much or not appreciate the position itself and who AICPA and CIMA was. And I was quite surprised, actually, by their response to it and how many of the Alineo member firms from Hong Kong, Singapore, South Africa, they were all incredibly impressed. First and foremost, the size. They just knew AICPA as being the biggest in the world by itself, just the CPAs in the U.S. economy. But then they were always quite excited because they said, well, we're still going to be a member of yours because we actually have the CGMA and we're a member of CIMA. And so that to me was the ultimate awakening to say we absolutely did the right thing. It makes a ton of sense. And while you've used the pyramid quite a bit, right? And you and I have talked a lot about this, and we've said it at both ends of the pyramid have been kind of outsourcing on one side and the technology on the other. Well, because firms have really invested in the technology, they become the outsourcer for the same pyramid model inside of business and industry.
Yeah.
And so many of them now, it could be that a company makes a choice not to be in a market themselves to set up a finance department and rely on a firm that's there, or there's some level of supplement between them. And so the lines of public accounting and management accounting are incredibly blurred today.
Yeah. Well, and then you and I were very active with Digital CPA and the advent of the cash practice, client advisory. And the stuff that we're doing in the future of finance relates directly to what cash practice are doing with firms all around the world.
Yeah. And we had, so inside of Alineo, we had a CAS community because we created communities, right? And so all those that wanted to advance their cash practice, one of the biggest things we kept hearing was the fact that they needed upskill training for their CAS team. And that upskilling that we were talking about was all around the CGMA level training. And so I was still involved. Fortunately, CPA.com kept me around for a few things, even after I left the association. But the CAS 2.0 and how to figure out what's next for CAS practices, it's the same thing. And I kept saying to our member firms when I was at Alineo, getting up in front of everyone, we're challenged in public accounting to find people. Our clients in management accounting and finance departments are as challenged as we are.
Yeah.
And so a lot of them, we become their supplement in being able to do that. But we need to upskill our people, make sure they have the right skills that the client's looking for to make that happen. Cass continues to be, to me, one of the most opportunistic inside of firms in the U.S. and globally to be able to provide this, because more finance teams are saying, you know what, we give up, just help us run a finance team, whether it's just one directly or it's the entire finance function for a smaller business.
Yeah. I mean, it's really because even small business has gotten complex. And so those small businesses, they can't get talent. And when their controller of 40 years retires, they don't know where to turn to. And now they can turn to their firm and get that done. And the flip side is we're dealing with a lot of cash practices, talking about the CGMA and the T-shaped professional in terms of the skill sets. And it's a huge opportunity and an exciting time for our whole profession. The other thing that's amazing, and I don't know how you're feeling about this part, because you were doing international work, but we're now at roughly 650,000 members and students across 188 countries together as CPAs and CGMAs. It's kind of mind-blowing. And we're the only one that has both public accounting and management accounting expertise in our wheelhouse.
That's right. And, you know, what's interesting, and this is really what helped me learn about that in Alineo, was the fact that, you know, so we'd have a firm call up and say, we need transfer pricing help in these 30 countries, right? And so then we had firms in those countries, and maybe they knew them, maybe they didn't. We just helped coordinate and bring the process together to put them together. One of our greatest successes was a $1 billion spinoff that I talk about a lot, spinoff from a larger company that at first they needed to be up in, I think it was like 20 or 22 countries within about a 3-week span, SAP implementation and accounting support in those 22 countries. By the time and I don't even want to say we finished the project because we're still involved, but at this point, they're in 56 countries. And of the 56 countries, 12 of those countries, it was our member firm being their finance function, because they said, you know what, we don't want to dedicate our own resources there. We'll just use one of your firms to do it. And so that's where it's just all mumble jumbled, right? So their head of global accounting and putting this all together, she's relying on it, and she's making the business decision of where they want boots on the ground and where they'll supplement elsewhere. And so that's how global companies are doing it. But then take it down to the smallest of company, right? And so when I was in practice, Buffalo, New York, right? Was where I said Main Street runs right through Buffalo, New York. And, you know, the not-for-profits that we had as clients and the small businesses we had as clients. And especially in the not-for-profit world, so many of them are like, you know what, we need to hire a CFO, but, you know, we only have a bookkeeping budget to do that. So they try and go out there and they try and hire someone with that capability without having the support to be able to do it. And today they're finally saying, okay, you know what, that's enough. We will hire the firm to do it. The firm can now automate it. Back in the day when I was doing it, I'm doing journal entries in the conference room. Today, all of that's automated, and the firm's able to go in and have more strategic discussions, which is what the client wants anyway.
It's incredible. Now, all right, now I want to get to purpose, because, and I'm going to add a little twist to this, because way back through the CPA Vision and the Horizons Project, we had a purpose on the CPA side, CPAs making sense of a changing and complex world. I think we would update that to CPAs and CGMAs, but now our basic purpose is to power trust, opportunity, and prosperity. Talk a little bit about that, how you see that, and how does that play in the public interest, ESG, sustainability, all the other things that we're working on.
Yeah, so I think it starts with that concept of trust, as you had just said. Right? So in the CPA world in the U.S. specifically, we were charged with trust. We wanted to be, and we are, the most trusted professional based on the fact that one exclusivity we have is audit. And audit is what we are truly licensed to do. everything else that we do in the marketplace is a matter of permission based on that level of trust that we've created. And I think with the CGMA, we could do the same thing. The fact that we have, standards around being a CGMA, same as we have standards being a CPA, being able to provide some level of trust in the environment around it. So when you talk about ESG, sustainability, and the like, yes, we have the ability now to provide some level of assurance over ESG and sustainability, and we can wrap it right into how we do financial statement audits and the trust behind the CPA to be able to do that. To be very U.S. specific for a second, one of the things that we were charged to do back a number of years ago, I don't even remember when it started, I just remember doing it, are the single audits, right? So the federal government provides funding to these not-for-profits and governmental entities around the country, and they wanted some level of assurance that they're following the program the way the money was intended to be spent. And so we were hired to not only do the financial statement audit, but to also provide assurance over those programs and provide that back to the federal government. In fact, over all these years, it was the OMB or the GAO who would come in and they would basically audit our audits about every 6 years. And just in the past year, our governmental quality center has been working with the federal government about that type of review. And the federal government then finally said, you know what, you guys have a peer review. We've been through it. We believe we can rely on that. We don't have to come in every 6 years to do that. And I think that's such a testament to who we are.
Yeah.
So when I think of, and was people, I got to put it in context to what I understand. So when people start talking about assurance over ESG or sustainability, I said, well, we can already do that over here in this single audit space. So why not do it in that? And then I think from a management accounting side, because of the reporting that we do in financial information, we do have to report on ESG, and how is that reporting going to be done? And that's where the finance teams are contributing greatly in being able to do that. So we have to understand it as a profession. We should own it. I'll say outright, much like financial information. I think that's where it's all kind of coming together. And you might have some firms out there or some small businesses that are saying, that's big company stuff. That's not for me. Okay, wait a minute. You're in somebody's supply chain. Yes. I don't know if we still have this out there or not. I'm going to get very local, geo-local in my example. But, I grew up, I worked for a supermarket chain, Wegmans, well known up in the Northeast. And Wegmans decided at some point, a privately held company, not even like mandated to do anything, they decided that they wanted to produce a sustainability report. And in that report, they wanted to state that they were able to reduce their water waste as an organization 20%. And so one of the clients, an ice cream manufacturer in small business America, would have been a great client of my firm. We lost that one. We didn't get that when we bid on the audit. We got the cookie company instead. But I know the small firm that did that. That ice cream manufacturer manufactures the white label for Wegmans. And we're told, by the way, ice cream manufacturer, we are saying we reduce our water waste by 20%. You need to prove to us that you've reduced your water waste because you produce our ice cream in our name. And so immediately that small business was thrust into sustainability without knowing anything about it. So if anybody out there is in the supply chain, or you have clients who are in the supply chain of these larger businesses, if you haven't heard about it yet, you will eventually.
I say coming to a theater near you, right? That's how that works. So, and interesting enough, what we are seeing in our future finance group is the emergence of the ESG controller or sustainability controller. So they're taking what used to be Sarbanes-Oxley controllers and because they're experts in all the financial information and controls, dedicating them to ESG in those larger corporates. So it kind of, again, the benefit of having both public accounting, management accounting, loud and clear for sure. Let's talk a little bit about advocacy and the public interest, because AICPA-CIMA's got literally global advocacy going on for all of our members.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about that. And and double click a little bit on that UK productivity report and what we do in the US, the EU, and UK.
Yeah, and we've been following that actually quite closely. There's a bunch of, I think, just a bunch of activity that's happening from that UK productivity report to say that they're, what is it? They're fourth, I think, in overall productivity and seem to be declining. Part of that, anytime you look at productivity, you're like, okay, what are the things that get in the way of being productive? And a lot of companies are going to go back on any type of regulation that tends to slow you down. And I think the UK is suffering from this greatly, especially coming outside of Brexit and trying to compete in a different way in the EU and the like. I mean, from Brexit, Ireland just exploded as far as companies that started to drive over that way to be able to kind of backdoor their way back into the UK. But the UK now is struggling with all this additional regulation and split up. We've seen this in the audit community. And now they're saying, how do we focus on being better business people as a country, because we need to compete against that. And I think all of us kind of are in the same boat around that. So we are following that closely. I think that also is having some impact on ESG related items, as you had mentioned, because what is it in the UK? I think it's CSDD, yeah. CSRD, and no, it's actually a different acronym now, IFTR or something like that in the UK, and then you have CSRD in Europe. And then everyone in the US said, well, we're not going to have to follow anything because we have a new administration. Maybe there's a couple of states that are doing what they're doing. But again, if it's a global company, they are trying to follow CSRD in Europe. And now they're starting to take a look at the cost benefit of the CSRD. So there's going to be probably some version of CSRD, but probably not at the level of where it's at today.
Yeah.
And so I do think that the more we can involve technology in being able to track some of these sustainability initiatives, and if we could be nimble as a profession to be able to help companies be nimble around some of these regulations, then that could help with the productivity and not just focused on the fact that we're overregulated. We need to pull back on the regulations all the time. There are some things that we could do from a technology standpoint to make it easier.
And then we're starting to see AI regulation proliferating all over the place, including states and Europe and UK and EU.
It's almost like if there's two versions of things as far as regulation. So something happens negatively in the marketplace, and then governments will knee-jerk react and just overregulate when things like that happen, or they try and regulate that which they don't understand.
Yeah.
And again, and I even think, some of the cyber related GDPR that came out of Europe, and then California followed pretty close suit to that. And, where does that stand today? And being able to allow companies to be able to sell and to talk to their customers in a different way and all that. So I do think that all of this, it needs to be watched, and we need to try and keep an open capital market as best we can without over-regulating it. And I get it, AI is scary. It scares me some days, but it doesn't mean that we have to over-regulate it to try and prevent things from happening when the capability is there.
But we have our EU, UK team and US team watching that stuff and weighing in on a lot of those regulations and standards as well. So you have a voice if you're in the AICPA and CIMA. All right, let's finish with the big topic that's obviously on everybody's mind, is this whole notion of technology. And I know, again, you were around when we started the CPA.com initiative, or you certainly were familiar with where that's gone. Yeah. And Eric Askerson and that team continue to do a big thing. Just talk a little bit about some of the activities they do, and especially DAS, the Dynamic Audit Solution. And then let's wrap it up.
Great. Well, yeah. So I wasn't here at the very start of CPA.com, but not far thereafter. And one of the things that I always appreciated, and I created that relationship, and it was important to me to interact with CPA.com in a very different way, because they were helping our member firms to get to a different point, and working with technology companies differently. It really helped me shape my leadership when I was at Alineo for 5 years of how important partnerships were with technologies to make it easier to find what's out there. You know, you were around when the Executive Roundtable was started, and so the Executive Roundtable, CPA.com created a meeting with the C-suite of the technology companies that impacted the profession. I think that first year we had like 40 companies that were there. It is first come, first served. They're all fighting to get in that room. They really want to have the conversation. And so when I think about, what was it, maybe 15, 16 years ago that was started, and the conversation back then was around integration and the fact that a lot of these companies weren't talking to each other. We were trying to push everybody to the cloud, right? In our membership saying you need to be in the cloud, you need to be in the cloud. And by the way, technology companies, you need an open API to allow for the firms and businesses to pick and choose how they're going to put their tech stack together and make sure that it's going to work. Because every time you send a new update to the cloud, if you don't have that open API, all of a sudden that connection gets broken.
Yeah.
And in the desktop environment, we could pick and choose when we were going to do the update with desktop. I knew there's some firms still today who are on desktop or still running some level of QuickBooks desktop version 2000 currently or something like that. So, cloud just makes it easier to keep updated. And we were active in that conversation and moved the profession forward and made it easier. I think a lot of our members wouldn't really necessarily understand that. We need to take that mentality and we need to move that globally. And we are looking at some executive roundtables that we can have in other markets where it impacts business and industry in a major way. And I think we can focus on that and stay involved in the conversation. Like you had mentioned AI, we need to stay on top of that. Who are the big AI providers? But also on ESG and ESG related reporting activity and the technology companies that are out there. We can partner with them. And then finally, the accelerator program that was started there. It's an AICPA sponsored event as well, trying to encourage innovation and these new technology companies that are coming to the profession, being involved in that and helping them kind of get introduced into the profession and maybe getting our member firms and businesses access to technology a little bit earlier than the rest of the marketplace.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. What an action-packed, 54 days that you've been out here running around. It's exciting and we're lucky to have you. We're gonna wrap up now. I want to say for more with Mark, you can follow him on LinkedIn at Mark Koziel. Do you have a Twitter handle?
I think I do. I think it's the same, right? Mark Koziel is
at Mark Koziel. Yeah, at Mark Koziel on Twitter.
I will confess I don't follow that as much. So if they're trying to reach me on there.
And what was your email again for Ask Mark?
Yeah, it was just that. Ask Mark at AICPA-CIMA.com.
Okay, so he's still open to hearing from you. Send your emails there. I think you said you had like 400 or 500 members who like sent stuff into you.
Absolutely. And like I said, on the CIMA side, it was really about how they are able to interact with us, communities, more sense of community. And then on the CPA side, don't forget about the small firm. I think some of the regulation and things and just financial reporting for small business as well. And
you're a regular on the town hall. So look for that AICPA town hall if you want to tune into what some of the things are up to in mainly the U.S. market. But Mark, this has been a great catch up. And for all my viewers out there, you want to be back here on LinkedIn the first and third Tuesday of each month at noon Eastern. Thanks again, Mark, and appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, Tom, and thanks to all who are members for being members. We appreciate you. Thanks.